Hey, welcome. This is Chris Wilson, Certified Functional Medicine Practitioner and Functional Nutritionist at GenesisTotalHealth.com, and wanted to come and talk to you today about chronic inflammatory response syndrome and why this is also linked with biotoxin illness from mold exposure, Lyme disease, although with chronic inflammatory response it's more so connected with mold than it is Lyme. However, there's certain mechanisms that need to be investigated when we're looking at this. And there was a prior video I did where I had forgot to show the article, and it was in, I believe, limbic system rewiring and can mycotoxins cause depression or neurodegeneration, Alzheimer's, etc., brain inflammation. This was the article that I had pulled that from, mechanisms of mycotoxin-induced brain or neurotoxicity through oxidative stress associated pathways. And so you can look this article up for yourself if you'd like to read it. International Journal of Molecular Sciences. And so let's get into what chronic inflammatory response syndrome is. Real quick, if you like this channel, if you like the information provided here, if you find it helping you or assisting you in any way, shape, or form, please like, subscribe to the channel, share this with your family and friends. I'm here to help empower people and educate people and inspire them to change. And let's get on board. Alright, so this paper here reviews a recently discovered chronic biotoxin illness. Now, a biotoxin is a toxin secreted from a living organism, biological organism, in this case mold, where it affects as many as 1 in 4 people in the United States. Most of what we know about this condition is the result of physician researcher, Dr. Richie Schumacher. And in his studies going back to 1998, he developed an increasingly thorough description of an illness caused by poor clearance of biotoxins, specifically mold toxins, produced by dinoflagellates, algae, and molds. And he named it or termed it chronic inflammatory response syndrome, CIRS or SIRS. And so when we look down through here, this will just kind of talk about how the various mechanisms right here on this pathway chart. What happens is you have the hypothalamus, which is essentially the control tower inside of your brain that regulates virtually everything hormonally, so on and so forth. And in my prior video, if you heard me talk about the limbic system, which controls emotional programming, sensory information of how your body can be stuck in fight or flight, that rest or digest, it's obviously telling your body, hey, am I safe or am I unsafe? And this can lead to things like fibromyalgia, multiple chemical sensitivity, and chronic fatigue syndrome, and just various maladies that most primary doctors don't really have an answer for in conventional medicine. And so when we look at this biotoxin pathway here, and you can go to survivingmold.com, I believe, and find this exact blueprint that I have here. This is just a blueprint from my school, Functional Medicine University, that I wanted to share with you here. So when we look at all of this, so what happens is these dendritic cells within the brain, a person has a genetic vulnerability to their HLA-DR gene. So HLA is human leukocyte antigen, and a person can have various discrepancies in this genotyping here where their body cannot clear the biotoxins appropriately. And again, 26%, a quarter of the population in the United States has this susceptibility. My wife is one of them. So the body acquires biotoxins or toxin producing organisms from food, water, air, or bug bites. So think ticks. For Lyme disease and co-infections, this can generate a chronic inflammatory response in the body as well. Others may disagree with me, but I tend to think that it does. So if a person's susceptible, well, what happens is these biotoxins can't adequately be removed from the body, and therefore they inflame the hypothalamus. They cause leptin resistance. They reduce another hormone called MSH, which is alpha melanocyte stimulating hormone. And why is that important? Because when we have a reduced MSH, we look at all these arrows pointing out to the various things that this can affect. So we look at sleep disturbance. We can see that there's production of melatonin is reduced, leading to chronic non-restorative sleep, chronic pain. So we have endorphin production is suppressed. This can lead to chronic, sometimes unusual pain, given that fibromyalgia-like diagnosis. Then we can have gastrointestinal problems. Probably the top 3 complaints that I hear from people are chronic fatigue, brain fog, and GI symptoms. And you can throw in hormone imbalances and, well, MSH is a hormone. It's just not one that's commonly talked about. So a lack of MSH can cause malabsorption in the gut, resulting in diarrhea, resulting in various maladies when we have malabsorption in terms of not getting the required nutrients that we need. And then we have constant damage to the gut, malnutritious, and this is sometimes called leaky gut and resembles celiac disease, and then IBS is often present. So something to really pay close attention to. If gastrointestinal problems are not resolving, then we might have a mechanism of chronic inflammatory response syndrome. And there's a symptom cluster to meet the criteria for SEERS. And so if you just type in SEERS symptom clusters, you'll find a plethora of images on Google that'll kind of show you, and you can decide for yourself if you fit into those categories of chronic inflammatory response. So prolonged illness. So white blood cells lose regulation of cytokine response, and that just means that they can't identify, really, they don't have the control, these chemical messengers called cytokines that go out and help gobble up antigens or foreign invaders and substances in the body. So that recovery from other illnesses includes infections, so think of viral load or a flare-up of Epstein-Barr perhaps. A lot of this may be prolonged, the recovery time here may be slowed. You'll have changes in cortisol, stress levels. So the pituitary may produce elevated levels of cortisol and ACTH, which is adrenocorticotropic releasing hormone, in early stages of illness, and then drop to excessively low levels later. You can have reduced androgens. These are hormones that are in the production for sex hormones. You can have reduced ADH. This is antidiuretic hormone. What this will do is it'll lead to thirst, frequent urination, like where you're always constantly thirsty, and susceptibility to static shocks. And then you'll have oftentimes what's heavily overlooked is people have the living bacterial organism or colonies of Marcons in their nasal passage, and that is resistant coagulase negative staph bacteria. And you swallow spit, you swallow your snot, and that gets down into your gut, and you just kind of start the vicious cycle over because you got the problem colonized in your sinus passage, and you're swallowing that stuff, and it's never really getting treated. And the problem behind that is because of a biofilm most of the time, and that biofilm is there, and it's resistant to a lot of treatment strategies. And then inflammation-related symptoms. So you've got these circulating high levels of cytokines, and they'll produce that flu-like symptom, kind of feeling achy and not well, headaches, muscle aches, fatigue, unstable temperature, difficulty concentrating, and more. And you'll get these markers right here, TGF, beta-1, MMP9, interleukin-1, and PAI-1. And so these are various markers that are quite expensive, but you can look at in the serum or blood if a doctor even knows what these are for. If you want these ran, I can obviously order these for you, but they'll help key in on, hey, do we have some type of biotoxin illness at play? And then that kind of helps us identify a treatment pattern or a treatment protocol for you to undergo. And I wanted to pull up this article here by Nancy O'Hara, who's an MD. She's got her master's in public health. Really awesome person. Haven't personally studied with her, but I've got colleagues who know her personally and who have, and have taken a lot of her courses, or just have trained with her, or have learned from her experiences in office with doctors I've trained with. And she talks a lot about SEERS here. Now, she has an awesome book. You can get it on Kindle Unlimited for free, and it's called Demystifying Pans and Pandas. Here, Dr. Neil Nathan has a really good book called Toxic that I'm familiar with, and when we go down here to learn what chronic inflammatory response syndrome is, here are some of the most common symptoms. So electric shock sensations, ice pick or lightning bolt pains, pulsing or vibrating sensations, especially down the spine. Other symptoms can include fatigue, weakness, memory, concentration, executive function problems, headaches, vertigo, lightheadedness, muscle aches, cramping, joint pains, unusual skin sensitivity, hypersensitivity to light, blurred vision, burning eyes, cough, chronic congestion, sinus and asthma-like illnesses, shortness of breath, chronic GI complaints, cramping, nausea, diarrhea, thirst, appetite swings, body temperature, irregularities, and night sweats. So when we look at this here, diagnosis is based on clusters of symptoms again, And together with a qualified practitioner, you can consider other testing such as visual contrast and sensitivity testing, and I can go further into some of these tests in other videos. Basically, the VCS, or visual contrast sensitivity test, I used to do this on every patient I worked with when I lived in Tennessee. I had a handheld device that they would hold out, and they would read off this chart, and then I could determine if they had some degree of biotoxin illness because of the patterns they were unable to see. So she goes into environmental remediation. Don't worry, I'll link this link here into the description box, so if you would like to go and read this on your own, you can. But phenomenal article here about SEERS, and I do like Nancy O'Hara, a great doctor here who's very, very well informed on integrative medicine. But you know, when we're looking at anything that deals with, you've got a sustaining illness, you've seen 9 different practitioners, you're not getting better, it's a good possibility that we could be dealing with chronic inflammation contributed by a SEERS that was, you know, brought on by perhaps mold from an exposure of a past building you were in, and it's colonized in your gut. I use organic acid testing to identify that, and then perhaps a urine mycotoxin test. I use Mosaic Labs. It's just a simple urine collection, and that can tell me if you have mycotoxins. There's a catch-22 on that I'll explain in another video when we talk about testing. And then I'll kind of talk about what I do personally when I treat people and help people overcome some of these toxicities when we're looking at really identifying if SEERS is the culprit here, or if we're just dealing with a host of organisms that are causing rampant inflammation in the body, such as mast cell activation or high histamine issues, SIBO or Lyme and co-infections from Babesia, Bartonella, Lyme being Borrelia, or other stealth infections or opportunistic stealth organisms, Epstein-Barr, cytomegalovirus, etc., etc. So if any of that resonates with you, comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you know. I always learn so much from working with the patient clientele that I see, and so I just appreciate you guys' support and your comment and your thoughts. And if you find this video valuable, please share it. We'll take care, and we'll see you on another one. Thanks.